welcome back to Care Life Podcast. I'm your host, Ms. Mackenzie. And as always, before we begin, remember to follow our social media pages on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads at Podcast Mackenzie so you can keep up with the latest from us and any other podcast we bring out to you out there. And today, we are making a return with Sean Parker, joining us from the UK. If you are new here and you don't know who he is or what he does, just go back a few episodes behind, 2-3 episodes behind. You can learn about him as an author, the works that he has placed out there for the world to see. He's an amazing person, but today we're not talking about him or his books. We're talking about music and art. And Sean, welcome to the podcast. So glad having you here back again.
Thank you, Phyllis. Delighted to be here as always. Lovely to see you.
Yeah, and today's topic is what I can call like a more relaxed topic, a topic that anybody on this planet can relate on, music and art. It's everywhere. It's part of our heritage as humans, if I can call it that. Music is here to stay, art is here to stay. We found it here and it will live on as we go on. But before I dive into anything weird when it comes to music and art, because I know we can talk and talk and talk when it comes to it, is the universal language. Music and art is a universal language for anybody. No matter where you're from, no matter what you resonate with in terms of your country, in terms of your heritage, music and art is something that brings nations and people together. So could you elaborate for those who might not be familiar with this kind of communalism that music and art brings? Could you just tell us how music and art connects people from diverse backgrounds and cultures?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when it comes to music and art, they're talking in a different sort of dimension to whatever we do in the everyday world, where the people that we are and the physical person, and even the language we're talking is between those things, but it's very much a part of this dimension. You know, you hear me, I hear you. When we listen to music, we go into literally a different part of our brain. It speaks to a different part of our brain, which is resilient even to dementia. If a person has Alzheimer's, it's a very sort of tragic thing for anyone to watch that happening to the old people when that happens to them. But the music cuts through all that. So an old tune that they remember from their youth, they can hum along to it, word perfect, in time. And it's astonishing how the music cuts through everything. And of course, when it comes to skin color and race and everything like that, it's almost irrelevant to the fact of our ears and how we hear. And the sounds that differentiate the things are kind of cultural and pleasant and an interesting thing to then engage with. Yeah.
Yeah, and the magic of it all is that it's always, no matter how old a piece of music is or no matter how old a piece of art is, it always resonates with somebody in the present time today. Let's take, for example, Van Gogh's paintings. These are old types of paintings. You won't find somebody who does similar paintings as Van Gogh today, but people resonate with Van Gogh's artwork. You always interpret Van Gogh's artwork based on your own experiences with life. You won't have the same interpretation as anybody else, but you have that connection with somebody in that I love Van Gogh, you love Van Gogh, I feel something when I see Van Gogh's artwork. Or when you listen to pieces of music, let's say from the first millennia, like Mozart or Vivaldi, these are old pieces of music. They are literal art. It's not like the music we have today, but people always resonate with these types of things. And I always find this as something magical, actually. I just say art is magic. Music is magic. We don't know what magic is, but it's the closest thing we can have to actual magic. And I don't know if there's anybody out there who feels the same way, but like Sean has said, people with Alzheimer's, it's like they always come back to life, if I can say that, when it comes to pieces of music especially. It's hard for people to remember whatever is happening on their day-to-day lives, but you'll find that these people, just a single piece of music or something as minute as let's say, a piece of art, or maybe a piece of drawing, or maybe something they did in the past that cannot even be considered as art. Art is literally anything. Even trash can be art. So whatever this person sees, they remember, they feel something within them. And this is something people tend to forget a lot, especially when it comes to today's world, that you can make an impact with literally anything that you do. Art is everywhere. Art is literally everywhere. Even the way you speak, even the way you walk, even the way you present yourself, that's still art in itself. Because, funny enough, today I was actually reading The Art of War by Sun Tzu. If I'm not wrong, that's the name of the author. Yeah, I fell in love with the book. I think I'm left with 2-3 chapters left in the book, but I'm already in it. Like, I don't know, the way he's written this book, he explains war as a piece of art. The way people go into war, the way emperors just conducted their generals, and the way these generals also conducted their troops, and the way you yourself, you can use this in your day-to-day life. I see this as something that can't be duplicated in today's world. Like, let me just ask you, how many people today can do what Shakespeare has done, or even what Dante Alighieri has done? I'm a poet myself, but I cannot do what Dante Alighieri did with the Divine Comedy. I remember it was one of the first things that I did on this podcast. I had to read all 400 plus pages of the Divine Comedy and then just shrink it up into 30 minutes. Something that somebody can remember. And this is art. This podcast is art. Sean is art. His work is art. His TED Talk is art. Mind you, for those who don't know, he has a TED Talk. You can see it online. That is art itself. And these are examples of the few global impacts, positive or negative, whatever things that, people can take it. These are the few impacts that music and art as a universal language has on the community itself. But before I derail myself, I can talk and talk and talk about music and art. Sean, let me bring you back. Art and music festivals. You're familiar with this, right?
Yeah, no, I'm just listening to you happily there. When it comes to I can't do Shakespeare, I can't do Dante. No, indeed, they did it. They did it the first time, and everything that we hear about them now is just a photocopy of what happened then. And we also can't do Picasso from the last century, or even kind of John Lennon from the last century, because they did it first. And we tend to think, but actually John Lennon didn't do it first because Mozart did it first. So always a reinterpretation. What we've got now in the postmodern 21st century is the fact that there's a feeling that everything has been done, which is a bit defeatist, but you know what they mean. It's like there aren't any, it just means that the new things haven't come up. But actually what's happening is that the media story has become the work of art. This is a bit dark and a bit depressing, but it's factual, where the only thing that actually matters is the amount to which the media story, whichever media story that is, sticks with a person. And if that happens to be, for example, a awful attack in Israel, then for a week or so, that becomes its own work of art in the minds of the world as they absorb that, the goods and the bads, and they put their own prejudice onto it, and it becomes powerful and in depth. And back in Shakespeare's time, they wouldn't have had that scale of things, obviously, but the Macbeth play would be in the minds of the Londoners as they go about their days, and that awful tragedy, almost like real life. And in the last sort of century, a soap opera would have the same effect on lots of people. They get confused with the actors in real life. And now those things did happen. All the things we see in the news does happen. We're doing this podcast now as it happens. And that's what makes it a work of art. And then the emotional intensity comes from the prejudice that the person brings to it. So the public brings all of the prejudice is not necessarily a bad word. It just means what they're coming to something with. And so that's how they're interpreting what went on there. And everybody has this massive social media reaction. Everyone freaks out. there's terrible things too. But there's also chances to reflect, and all those things are an emotional moment. So that's a positivistic way of looking at the art of journalism in the way that you were just talking now about art itself.
Hmm. And music and arts festivals, let's say like Oktoberfest and Coachella and all these other big and small art and music festivals, they're becoming increasingly popular, especially in the 21st century. They weren't quite as popular back then, but right now in this modern day and age, they're becoming a lot more popular for all people of all ages. So what role do these events play in fostering a sense of community and sharing artistic experiences?
Yeah, festivals. Wow. I did my first one properly, I think, in 1998 to Glastonbury Festival here, which is obviously quite a biggie. The Robbie Williams was playing that year, so I got there. And what we do in England is it's very, very sort of mixed up with beer. Our festivals, and there was lots of beer there. And but now, after that, it's become very corporatized. You can't go to any festival in Britain without being bombarded by corporate branding. So people who consider themselves sort of above that or outside it don't go anymore because they don't want to be co-opted by all that stuff. As you say, it's big business. The Virgin Festival was huge here. Mr. Richard Branson got involved for a few years, came out of it because they do foster a sense of humanity together, of people coming together for a thing to look at in front of them. Dance, good music, a big gig, the Rolling Stones, or some things on a lower scale, like a literary festival and things like that. I've gone to speak at a couple in the past, and they're just as good and they're just as lovely, and they are the coming together of people. And we are a bit in Britain. I don't want to be don't want to do it down too much, but we're swamped by them. We have absolutely far too much choice over the couple of the months we've got of summer here. But they do go all year round. They can be inside and outside. But a festival is a good thing. Don't get me wrong. I like it. It's nice, but it has become very much a business thing now this century.
And that's the sad part actually, because let's take a look at something like the Super Bowl in the US. This is a sporting event, yes, but somehow they've introduced this whole thing about it's always been there, it's like a tradition, yes, but you introduce the festival aspect of it where you get big artists, they do big performances, they have big endorsements, every single company wants to have their face on a Super Bowl commercial. Like, it's the biggest thing of the century when you realize, oh, my company? It's on the Super Bowl commercial. That's customers. That's ratings off the charts. Oh, this artist is getting featured. Their albums sold out for the entire year. Even their old albums that were forgotten. And when you mentioned the UK having like epic festivals, yeah, the UK has festivals literally everywhere. It's not only in London or everywhere. No matter how small your town is, it will have some sort of music festival, and I find that so fascinating. I don't think a week can pass somewhere in the UK without a festival. I don't think there is somewhere you can say it's been Monday to Friday, and north, east, south, west, there hasn't been at least one singular festival in the UK. The UK is fun, guys. It's fun. It's chill. It's fun. If you haven't watched like any of the football chants, it's the only thing that I love about football. The UK going wild about football. Not soccer, football. That's the only thing. I don't like sports like ball sports, but that's the only thing I like. It's artistic. How do they find this impromptu chance? Like, I just sit there during the football season. I look, if it's the Premier League, if it's anything else, no matter how big or small, and I always hear UK fans doing this wild chants for their team, for their opposing teams, and I'm like, did they practice? No, they didn't have time because this crowd is huge. The crowd is massive. So how do you tell me the entire crowd knows what to do or what to say? It's artistic. Guys, it's artistic. Let me just say that. But the digital age has made music and art more acceptable to the masses. It's not like in the past where a lot of people were separated and a lot of genres were not accepted on most parts of the world. And in what ways has the internet and social media today transformed the way people discover and interact with both music and art?
Well, the internet has totally sort of changed the way that people consume music. At the start of it all, in for example 2000, though of course it's a rolling thing, but like 2000 going on, I started to release albums in 2005, and I've done about 6 or 8 now or something. And I was in on the start of all that, watching it grow, watching people put the CDs and the vinyl and the tapes behind them as a product, which I grew up with, and then coming into this whirling sea of automatically available. It wasn't automatically available all the time. It was downloads. Now it literally is turning on a tap and getting the song out of the tap, as Mr. David Bowie kind of predicted in 1999, of what would happen to the internet. And for a while, you resist it and go, oh no, I want my music a bit more precious than that, etc., etc., etc. Now, I'm actually a big fan of the streaming revolution. I've just come to it in my fourth decade, of going, it's actually really good. You get your playlist, you do your favorites, and then the gods of the algorithm will say, I think Sean might like this next one. They put it on, and God, you do like that new one. And I'm like, thank you for that, And so it takes a while to open an old brain like mine, and then it sort of goes, oh, right, that does work. And actually, I do appreciate it big time. And it's been a shot in the arm for the resources, the finances of a bunch of musicians, where you can utilize the back catalogue, turn it over again, reintroduce it for this age. You can reintroduce the music under the remastering, making it sound pristine if you want that. Not everybody wants that, and it's good to keep a bit of the old crackle as well. But it's absolutely revolutionized it in such an interesting way. It's taken us a while to get to the fact of non-ownership. But I think when it comes to music, we're able to realize that we never owned it in the first place. And that's been interesting. You don't actually own that copy of sort of the Madonna's Vogue that you thought you did in 1990. You were renting it, whatever. Mm-hmm. You were helping the artist with owning that thing. And the piece of art, being the album cover, is a very precious thing to people of my generation, and perhaps yours and younger. Perhaps they still like their art associated with artists. I think they probably do, but they're very used to the fact that the music is amorphous. You don't own this piece of plastic, and that's been a revolution in itself. And it's important that the music industry got an injection of cash back, because otherwise we'd lose it, and they've managed that. And I think that's quite interesting and quite kind of reassuring in a way. And also, by the way, Phyllis, I quite like the fact that in the past, the music was totally market-based, always new, always getting a new thing, and that being the main sort of driver of the new. And now, I don't feel that's as much of a thing, because a lot of younger people that I know will say, I love this band Led Zeppelin. Have you ever heard them, Sean? I'm like, yeah, I do know Led Zeppelin, actually, that kind of thing. They think it's a new band, just like the next thing. And I think that's really exciting and lovely, because they all sound of the same mastering, and not all the sounds are completely different. It really is postmodernism at its best, because it's mixed up, and you don't know what's coming next or who's doing it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we actually have to give props to streaming services, because I think if it weren't for them and weren't for the internet, a lot of good music pieces would have been lost forever. Because you'll find that these days when you go on YouTube, suddenly you have not even Spotify, YouTube basically. You have this weird recommendations if you listen to music a lot, and you find these old pieces of music. Old artists, you even forgot their songs existed. And then you're like, wait, I used to hear that growing up. I used to hear my grandma singing that song. I used to hear my mom singing that song. And it's something that if the internet was not there, that would have been gone, because these were things that were originally sold on cassette tapes. I got rid of my mom's cassette tapes literally a month ago. She was still holding on to them. She had everything. She had the Macarena. She had Notorious Big. She had Kenny Rogers. She had everybody, including Dolly Parton. She had every single artist you can think of, shoved very nicely in a cute box in a cassette, and she didn't want to get rid of them. because it's sentimental to her. These were her college days. These were things that she used to listen to. These were things that we used to listen together with her. These were the first songs that I learned to sing to and learned the lyrics of in literally a cassette tape. You know, most people say, oh, you're a Gen Z, you know the internet. No, I actually grew up seeing VHS tapes. I grew up seeing cassette tapes, and it was always fascinating when everything just unravels. You know, the tape inside the cassette tape. My mom had to teach me how to rewind it back into the cassette tape so that I can play it back on the radio. And right now, I hear the same pieces of music that my mom used to sing with me, that she used to teach me, playing on Spotify or playing on YouTube, and I always feel so happy because I'm like, today's kids that are born today, these things will be stuck there on every streaming platform. So for them, they'll be saying, oh, do you know, like, there's this artist known as Bono, and he did an amazing piece of music. Have you heard it? And I'll be like, wait, I used to listen to that person growing up, but no, in reality, that was an artist that my mom used to listen growing up to. Or somebody says, oh, you know what? I heard about this nice country song. I don't love country, but I heard this new artist. His name is Kenny Rogers. God rest his soul, but it's there. It's just there. And I love it so much because I can find literally everything. Like, for the past few months, I've been so obsessed with every single piece of music and every single movie that was produced either between the 60s to the 90s. Nothing more. I just need anything in the middle. It was so raw, so legit, especially for the music. It's not like today's music. Back then, every single piece of music was emotionally based. If it was an angry song, you literally knew this was an angry song. If it was a love song, you knew this was a love song. If you knew it was a neutral family song, if it was a song of hope, you knew it. Today, you have to first think, do these lyrics have a different meaning? Or am I just reading way deep into it? And I think these are some of the possibilities that streaming platforms can have. Just sharing every single thing that came from the past and bringing it into this new generation. You can literally bring the past. It's like time traveling. You can bring the past into the present, and everybody can enjoy the music. And I don't know if you saw this, but I think I'm probably one of the few people who saw it last. But during COVID, on Google, they had this thing where, because people couldn't travel during COVID, you could use this thing on Google where you could visit historical places via your computer. You didn't have to move. It's like you were there in 3D. If you wanted to go to the Louvre, you can use it in 3D and see the Louvre. You didn't have to fly all the way to Paris. If you wanted to see Big Ben, the clock, you can just stand there and watch it. If you wanted to be in New York and see what the Statue of Liberty or Liberty is doing, standing there, how it looks inside, how Liberty Island is looking like, you can literally see it. I don't remember what it's called, but it's a Google function. You can travel at the comfort of your laptop. And this is artistic as well, because who gets to say they saw the Mona Lisa? You haven't seen it physically, but at least you saw something close to it. It's not fake. It's not fake. It's real. They just took a 3D version of it and allowed you to see it. And I think without the internet, a lot of people wouldn't say that they've seen things like this. They couldn't say they've seen something like the Great Wall of China, or they couldn't say they know how Bali looks like, or they couldn't say they know how Germany in Berlin looks like, or they can't say that they know even how the Atlantic looks like itself. I'm sure they don't know if the color is blue, if the color is clear. People don't know. But with the presence of streaming platforms and people doing all those things in social media, like vlogging, especially vlogging, has transformed the way people view art, because you travel through the lens of somebody else. You literally don't have to be there.
This comes back though to just what am I trying to say? Yeah, when it comes to the music streaming that you're talking about, that is the real thing. The recording of it is the real thing. You sort of think, if you're not hearing the flute right in front of you, but no, that recording is the art itself, right? If you're talking about the landmarks like the Atlantic Ocean or the Louvre, it's great that it exists, but it's second best because it's two-dimensional. The fact that we're looking at each other now is the second best to being with each other, because there is always the two-dimensional sort of, it's the remove. So it's in times like COVID, of course, it's nicer to see these things than to not. And if you're teaching a class, it's great to do it this way, for example. But the best will always be to be in front of the students, and the best will always be to be in front of the Mona Lisa, though it's not that good. But best to actually be in front of it, as opposed to having it like this. This is the second best. But when it comes to the music, any music is great. So there's a difference in there as far as I'm concerned, in terms of how things actually, and that's why the virtual reality, with the Meta thing, yet again, hasn't taken off. They've been talking about virtual reality for 30 years, and it's never taken off. It's never quite done it. It hasn't got there yet. Will it? Maybe. But even this time, it hasn't worked for Mark Zuckerberg. So there's something about that people just aren't going for. They don't want the total immersion when it's actually not necessary and it's not giving you anything. Maybe it will in the future. But what happening now is that this isn't virtual reality. This is like a for phone call that kind of you and I can have. We can do that to our audience. And that's different from a virtual reality situation where it's not us anymore. It's avatars and a conversion of you and a hologram. There's something about all these things that are slightly different. And when it comes back to music again, that is its own thing, except when it comes to remixing. And we don't necessarily like remixing because you're not getting the original thing that you've been talking about,
Yeah, you actually mentioned about virtual reality, and then I remembered somewhere I saw a post, it was a while back, that they were trying to create a chip that they could implant in our heads in the future so that we can just download information instead of reading about it. It was insane. I think people have watched a lot of movies at this point because you're trying to change our DNA and our human structure into becoming computers and everything like that, or uploading your consciousness into the internet. It's quite impossible because consciousness is not something tangible. So how do you find it so that you can transfer it?
Well, absolutely. Until they work out what the soul is, I don't think they're going to get very far with that. Elon Musk, bless him, whatever he's up to, the fact is that these things like chips are going to be introduced as a good thing to help people to walk, so you can talk to the neural receptor in your arm to make things work. And this is a good thing. Like any kind of
positive.
But that's all positive and good. And of course, there must be the safeguards. But the fact of the chip being able to actually understand what memory is, if that ever does happen, I don't think they're there. That's not a neural network, unless you're the kind of person that thinks human beings are robots, and those scientists do exist. We're much more complex than that, and it'll never quite do it in the same way it hasn't with virtual reality. You're not good. And if they do have a bunch of cyborg clones out there, we are going to look down on them in a way that other beings have never been looked down before. They'll be fitter and healthier and more everything than us, but they're not going to have the depth of culture that we've got going on here, which has been improved on from the last century, because you and I wouldn't have been able to do this 50 years ago. And what will that be like with AI in the next 50 years? Well, we're going to see that's going to be bumpy, but whether they're actually going to get into our noggin, head in English, and to actually work out what's going on deep in the synapses. Oh, Christ. I mean, fascinating. And they won't be going anywhere in my lifetime, I don't think. But
I think by the time they figure that out, AI would have free will by then. I think it would have taken over. I think all robots would have taken over and moved on to Mars and left us here for dead before they even figure out how to transfer our consciousness or how to make us like interdimensional beings. At this point, we are just fragile things. If they try to mess with our brains, we'll literally melt. They'll melt our brains out. So they could just leave us. Let us enjoy AI as it is. Let us enjoy virtual reality as it is. Try to help people as much as you can with their body functions, with cognitive issues, but don't mess with our brains. I don't want to become a computer, please.
I want to just add to what you're talking, which is obviously we're a long way from music and art now. But anyway, anyway, there's a couple of things in the past, right, where with nuclear weapons, and clones, both of these things exist. But we have the technology; they're there. God knows what they're doing in China, by the way. But these things do exist in the world, and we haven't capitalized on it. We haven't extended it. We haven't used it. We haven't industrialized it. The technology is there, and we haven't gone there much further. There've been a few atom bomb explosions, but these things haven't destroyed the world. And I think AI obviously has that potentiality, but also humans might come out and say, no, we don't want this any more than we want clones or nuclear weapons. And just, we've got the technology, thank you, we're not going to go for it. We do have the capability to do that. Internet makes us think that we'll just get carried away and we're not going to stop ourselves and stuff. But there are some people who will actually eventually, adults in the room, who will say, thank you for the technology. No, we're not going to do that. People like me and you, Phyllis, who actually say,
adults with common sense, not just adults.
Yeah, well, yes. Yeah.
Adults with their heads still on their necks. Yeah, but anyway, let's just reel ourselves back in. Art often carries a message and a story, like I told you in the beginning. Everybody will interpret art in their own way. You won't see a piece of art and think of the same thing, unless it's literally written and spelled out for you. But when you find a piece of art, you find, I don't know where I saw this. Was this on TikTok? There was this artist who just put up 2 clocks in the museum, and they were ticking in the same time. Like if one is at 11:40, the other one is also at 11:40. But the beauty of it was, even if they were ticking at the same time, one would stop before the other, signifying death. Like how you have partnership with somebody, you live with this person, you love this person until the very end, one of you has to leave the other. And it was just 2 clocks. Just 2 clocks, he slapped on some batteries and put them on a wall. And that was art. And you'll find somebody else who walk into the same room and be like, why are there 2 clocks over there?
Mm-hmm.
And then there'll be another person who'd walk in and immediately understand what's going on, or somebody else would walk in and somewhat understand what's going on. They won't have the same interaction, but at least understand that this is art. I get the artist. So how do artists use their work to convey messages and provoke thoughts, and also do some things like inspire change in the community? What are some things that they do, or what are some things that they can do to convey these messages they want to convey to their audiences?
Yeah. That thing you just talked about with the clocks, which is fascinating. It's the first time I've heard of it, is kind of conceptual art, and which has sort of been around for about 120 years now. Kind of first popularized in Paris by Mr. Marcel Duchamp, who put the urinal, just a white urinal, in the Paris Salon exhibition there, with the signature R. Mutt on the side of it, which no one knows what it means, but it's just a urinal, but he called it fountain. And so this was outrageous to the Paris team at the time, who were expecting one of his paintings, like a cubist painting, to come along, which is what he did. But no, he got sick of it and said, no, I'm just putting this urinal here. And they're saying, why? And he said, well, it's art if you think it is. And that was pretty much his statement on it. He actually didn't say anything about that. The critics said, it's art if you think it is. So because they'd already kind of, with the cubism, and sort of Picasso had started to reduce everything to just kind of mask faces and things like that. So the art critics didn't know what to do with any of this art anymore. So it just became the subjective, what you thought about it was the art itself. And thus the conceptual art was born from Duchamp, basically. He did it the best because he was the one that really moved quickly through it. There were other artists as the century went by, like sort of Christo in the 60s and 70s, who would cover the landmarks of the world in cloth. So it would just be like, if you know what the Eiffel Tower is, then to see the Eiffel Tower with an enormous cloth over it. I don't think he did the Eiffel, but he did lots of others, like the Bundestag in Berlin. He would just cover them in cloth, completely adjusting how you saw that building. So it's just about kind of sort of changing perceptions, as we've been talking, as you do with time, with those clocks that you're talking about. And here in Britain in the 90s, we had Damien Hirst, Tracy Emin, the young British artists, they called it, where we basically threw a bunch of money at London and at these young artists. They all became millionaires to basically get drunk and use their imaginations from St Martin's College, and they became famous. They did their sharks, they did their cut up cows, they did a bed. They did all kinds of conceptual artworks, which is great because art is about thought and about. He had this shark, Damien Hirst, in the formaldehyde, and he called it the impossibility of death in the mind of someone living. But it's just a shark in a tank, but it's terrifying to look at because there's a shark in the middle of an art gallery. You're going, what is this? And then you start to realize like you're in a natural history museum, that kind of thing. And then if you go into a gallery and you see two clocks on a wall, you sort of think, am I in an office? But that'll be one clock telling me the time. And then that's asking you these very simple questions, very eloquently, because they don't have to go into the blood and guts that we often get with concept art. They're just going with the concept of time, which is absolutely lovely. And it makes you think, and not all art has to make you look, which is, I'm a painter. I like actual visual objects. I like color and shape and things like that. But lots of artists like just making you think. And that's as exciting as anything else, really.
Yeah, and it also stretches to artists like sculptors. I find sculptors mysterious because why don't you just make a sculpture that makes sense? Because a lot of sculptures that I see, yes, leave alone like marble art where people make statues and all that, most sculptures that are considered artistic or telling an artistic story, they don't look like anything. Let me just say that. When you try to look at it, you end up getting a migraine trying to figure out what that thing is. Like, whatever angle you look at it from, it doesn't make sense. And also there are these people who've come up with this three-dimensional imagery where you find that, I don't know, it's like a box of mirrors. It's like a full-face box of mirrors, and then they put a triangle inside. When you look at one side, let's say from the left, the box is there, but when you look through the right, the box is gone. It's like vanished. And you're like, okay, so what's going on? And before they even tell you that what the illusion is going on in there, I think they're called illusionists, before you even figure out what's going on there, you'd have gone through a hurdle trying to figure it out on your own. It's not like a painting that's right there, you have time to process it. These other ones, sculptures, illusionists, we also have this, I don't know what they call it, like, it's a piece of music, I forgot the name. It's music. No lyrics, it's like, remember how, like, classical music, it's just notes that are playing together to create the music. But in this sense, when you play the notes that are on paper, they don't make sense. You have to play them at a certain arrangement to hear the song. So the song is there, but the score sheet is written in jumbles. And that's art. You have to figure out how to play the notes in order to create the song. If you know the song, it's easier for you to play the song. And this is art as well. And I'm like, wow, this is fascinating. How do you even think about that? How did you think about spreading out the notes? Just grabbing what was and bringing it into something totally different. It's like a conversion. It's like taking something that once was into other variations of itself, and you have to trace your steps back into finding the meaning of it all. And it's just inspirational, if I can say that. It's fascinating as well, often confusing, ends up with giving me a massive migraine. And I end up mad sometimes because I'm like, how is this thing worth billions? How is an empty canvas that has no painting on it, it's plain white with a signature, worth billions? Because the same emptiness you see on the canvas signifies the emptiness some people feel in their lives. And I'm like, so you mean all this time I could have just bought a piece of canvas, signed my name on it, put it on a museum and say, this is art? Because I think that's the direction a lot of people are going on with it today. Literally anything is art. When you go on TikTok, they're like, you know what? Anybody can do art. Drop your paintbrushes. Like, soak them in whatever paint you're using, drop them on your canvas. Whatever pattern they make, that's your art. Don't even have to learn anything. You don't have to learn brush strokes. You don't have to take meticulous times and meticulous strokes just to get the perfect landscape like how any other painter has done before. Today, you just put a bucket on a string, let the paint swirl, whichever part of the canvas it lands on, let it dry, sign your name, and that is art. We have literally gotten to that point in life where anything, literally anything, including a coffee stain, is art. It depends on you.
just to contextualize this for our listeners, that is the end result of the deconstructionism, is that you get to this point of, here's a canvas, it's just a white block, and someone's going to get paid £10 million for it. What's happening is that you're paying for the artist's name, and you're paying for all the thought that has been written about that. And just from the kind of outrage that we're talking about now, once you have enough people doing that outrage, you're paying for the algorithm. So it's like you're paying for fame. And that's just the fact that people are pissed off with it is enough for it to become special. So that's the end result of that deconstruction. And the fact is, it's not art that you can have for any purpose other than to talk about it. So that comes back to the media stories that I was talking about earlier on. When it comes to getting a couple of brushes and sticking them on the thing, and then that becomes art. If you have an artist who's doing that without having become a proper artist before, then yeah, that person's an opportunist. But usually what happens with people who do that kind of thing is that they've become a proper painter. Like Mr. Picasso was a fine, precise, photorealistic painter in sort of 1900 up to 1910, really proper doing, and he got bored of doing all that precision, and then he started to simplify everything. And that's the process of deconstruction. So what was happening to get the thing down to the blank canvas is just that pushed to extremes. And then the art market is its own animal. So it decides what something's worth. And, if I go down to an art shop, I would like to pay over the odds for something, £500 for something that's actually worth £50 in order to patronize the art market and to keep it going and to give the artist a sense of worth, that kind of thing. And that is what the art market's doing for their own little bunch of people. But it's a bunch of hype. It's a bunch of media hype. It's been that for 100 years. So we're not talking anything new. And Mr. Van Gogh didn't sell anything in his lifetime. Well, I think he did actually sell one, but it was for like 50 francs or something like that. So it's like, that's the reality, is the growing hype of people writing about something and it is story affecting people. And the more we get into the decade century, it's about the story as opposed to the thing. And that is what is where, and there's a story behind that blank canvas that you just said. And the fact that you said the story, if we knew the name of the artist, that would then, the fact that we're talking about the clocks you mentioned is fantastic for that very cool piece of work, for example. So all these things are indeed art, as what we're doing here.
Yeah, and if only back then artists like Van Gogh had the internet, I think he would have sold more pieces than he did after his death, because I think it's the exposure. It's not like in the past, because in the past they didn't know the impact their art would have. I think they were just expressing themselves. They're just expressing themselves, they're expressing whatever they're feeling or sharing with the world the beauties around them. But today I see a lot of people like literal art connoisseurs. They're saying that you can see a piece of the artist within their own art, because for actual painters you find that they have certain strokes they make with their brushes. I've heard that you'll find, let's say, a certain artist, every single painting they do has similar strokes. You can see the way they use their brush. That's why it's hard to duplicate most paintings today, because a lot of artists have like that precisionness. It's not like me doing like an art project in my own home or going somewhere and learning how to do art. This is something that took time, took years, took patience, and every single time it's like they leave a piece of themselves within the art. And I think that's why people just find it easy to recognize some famous art than local artists, because you find, let's say for example, graffiti. like any person who does graffiti with spray painting, you find that graffiti artist is well known because they know everybody, each of their fan knows that they normally spray in this certain way. It's spray, but they know this is what kind of spray they use. This is the kind of art they use. This is the kind of message they send out to people. It's easy for them to recognize compared to someone like me. If I just go somewhere in the tubes of London and just leave a piece of art hanging, nobody will know if this is a famous person, was this just some random kid who bought spray paints or maybe bought an oil set and just some brushes and canvases and just painted and left things there. But if it was a famous person who's well known, whose piece of art has been shared long enough for people to see how and what type of message they share with the world, people actually start grasping clues here and there. They know, oh, their signature looks like this. This is their signature. If you see this signature anywhere on a wall, if they've tagged this wall this way, this and this is the artist's name. If you see a painting, even without seeing the signature, if you see the painting resonating some type of message, let's say a message of hope, a message of pain, or maybe it's all dark and gloomy, it's this certain artist. Or if you see certain brush strokes, or if you see a merge of colors and hues, it's this certain artist. And if back then they had that kind of exposure, it wasn't just about word of mouth, because I'm sure during Van Gogh's and Picasso's time it was all about word of mouth. Oh, have you seen this? Have you seen this? Have you seen? So it's like a chain reaction. I say, you hear, you say, you hear, and by the time it moves from Germany to France, it's years already. This person is dead. He's dead already. He's probably been stopped painting at this point. His paintings are even forgotten at this point. His kids are the ones who have these paintings, and somehow, after their death, now they're famous. Somehow their paintings are 3-4 times the value they would have been when they were alive. And I actually don't get why people do that. How does art add value when people die? Or even how does music add more value in terms of revenue when the artists themselves die? I've never figured that out completely. I've tried. It's a mystery.
But it's the mystique. You can't access that artist anymore. And the fact that they've gone from this dimension in which we're talking into the other one, or Elon Musk's or whatever he's inventing, they've gone somewhere else, wherever that may be. And just that automatically, just the mystery of that makes, and the more violent the death, of course, the better the story. And the younger the artist, having done Kurt Cobain, Van Gogh, these sort of people, all of those early death stories up to our day with like Heath Ledger and things like this, having done, is it the Batman Returns, Batman Begins, the Joker, and that was his art done there, a very, very, very powerful last statement, and then off he goes. The press loves that because they've fallen in love with the actor to a certain extent, the artist, and then they fall in love to an undeniable extent when they go, because nothing more can really mess with their reputation unless something terrible comes out. So that all these things contribute towards a good human story, and all you need. There's a lot of people who don't rate Van Gogh at all, right? They don't care. They're not bothered. I mean, I'm an enormous fan of him. I think it's great because I love all art, but I'm not touched by him more than anybody else. But because of his death, because of the legend, because of the ear going and the prostitutes and stuff like that, and the fact that the strokes are very, very simplistic. These things create the human behind the art, don't they? And that's what we're going towards. The death of him at a young age, the mental illness, all those weird stories, and the fact that it's all in beautiful France, I think, and Holland, and all of those things go towards the person's legend. I can remember in '94, I was 19, and just before Kurt Cobain died, so the music of Nirvana had been so universal on the airwaves. And we only had a couple of radio stations then, but it were banging out Smells Like Teen Spirit all the time. And a year later, the bloke kills himself, the shotgun, as a heroin addict. You're like, my God, after he's just charmed the world with about 6 massive, brilliant songs. And that's an amazing story for Geffen. You know, it's kind of the record label, and up go the sales by about tenfold. And it's just what you do with popular artists. It helps to be a bit popular, and then when the death comes, the sales come, and it's one of those things. And it's kind of, there's something all right about it, because it's kind of giving some praise to someone after they've gone in a way they wouldn't have had before.
Yeah, but I wish they also did the same when this person was alive. I think that they would have appreciated feeling the love from their fans. I would think they would have appreciated seeing the impact their work does, because when you look at artists from the past, not when I'm saying from the past, I'm literally meaning 10, 15 years ago, not even far back, 10, 15 years ago. These artists have done so much. They have done such great music. Let's say like Whitney Houston. After her death, yes, people loved her, but after her death, she became thrice as famous. Till today, who doesn't know who Whitney is? Like, you find a lot of people, they forget that these people need to feel the love while they're also still alive. You don't need to praise their songs after they're dead only. You need to show their love when maybe that's the only thing they need. They just need to hear their appreciation today.
I hear you. I totally hear you. But it was that appreciation that contributed to Kurt Cobain killing himself. He didn't want the fame. He didn't want all that attention. So there's another side to this where a bit too much attention can
there is.
contribute to. Well, so there's that.
Yeah, it is. It's sad actually, because also it's actually like it's a similar story to something that happened in South Korea. I don't know, when was it? I think this year or maybe last year. I might have my dates wrong, but there was a beloved Korean actress. She was loved. She was famous. Everybody loved her, literally, her fans, her family. She was the pride and joy of everybody. But the pressure of everything, she was depressed. There were some other things going on the sidelines, and she never wanted to share it with anybody. And she just ended up committing suicide in the end. And she left a message to everybody, and that message was so positive, which was sad. She just messaged. She had a group chat with her fans. She had this. It's like a Chinese or a Korean version of WhatsApp. So she had all her fans in there. She left a very nice message. She sat with them, and then she told them that she loves them. And apparently that was the last time they would ever hear her voice. She just wanted her family and her fans to remember how sweet she was. They didn't want the world to remember her as sad or depressed, because she didn't want anybody to know that was going on. And was it not for leaked audio clips of her being so mad, being so angry at everything around her and everything that's going wrong around her, nobody paying attention to her, nobody would have known. Nobody would have known. And I think that a lot of artists today, that's the thing, they go through the same thing, because when you read articles, like right now when I see an artist has passed away, if it wasn't targeted, if it was self-inflicted, there's always something behind it. There's a story behind it, always 24/7. And I'm like, was it the fans' fault? Or was it the people around her? Or if it wasn't anybody's fault, was it just the pressure? The pressure about being perfect? Because I'm sure every single artist out there, no matter what type, form of art you do out there, there's always this pressure that people carry around with them. They have this pressure of being perfect. They have a pressure of producing. They have a pressure of being at the top always. If you're already at the top, you can't go down. That's
the problem with being that's the problem if you're being a pop artist, because pop defines itself by perfection and things being all kind of saintly and all the rest of that. And I mean, I don't know about you, but that doesn't do anything for me, because there's nothing humane in perfection. The interesting thing is in all the problems and the good things of people, you know, being a whole character. And if a person has to pretend all the time to be physically perfect, is difficult enough, I'm sure, for a person called kind of Caroline Flack from here a couple of years ago, who's a TV presenter who unfortunately killed herself. But he's a very sort of beautiful person who used to present the reality TV shows, but she had her terrible issues and ended up killing herself, and that created a huge angst within the media industry of did we do this to her? At the end of the day, people who kill themselves. It's there can be contributory factors, but you shouldn't come away from the fact that there's self-determination, which is the right of an individual to end their own life. And that's people can't seem to bear that, but it's just a fact of being alive once you get used to it. But the problem is the standard of perfection is an unrealistic one, and if you're going to be in the public eye, don't bother with that. So get that kind of pop stuff we have of everything being squeaky clean. I know lots of the managers need that to keep the product going, but there's no point in that product. You might as well be real, otherwise, I don't know. It's not for me anyway. It's for some people, but
yeah. Even for you don't have, not even necessarily for famous people. Even if you're just starting up, if you're just in the bottom, you're trying to climb yourself up the ladder, picking up whatever you can find along the way. It's hard being perfect because I can attest to that. Growing up, I've always been an overachiever, like not in a bad way, like in a good way. Like I have to win. I have to do this. I have to win. That's in me. Like I'm a sore loser till today. Like I'm very competitive. Like I won't accept it. If I lose, I swear I'll find a rematch. I will not accept it. But being perfect has been hard. There's always that pressure. Like you have to be perfect. You have to be a perfect daughter. You have to be a perfect student. As you're doing whatever you're doing, you have to be perfect at it. And perfection is hard. And until you learn how to let everything go, it eats your brain up completely. Like you lose yourself entirely, because when you're trying to please everybody else, you end up losing yourself. You won't please anybody.
You came to that conclusion at the end of that little.
Yeah.
That's the reality. What you just said. You've got to let it go, haven't you? Otherwise,
you have to let it go. I learned it the hard way. Like literally, even the doc was like, "Let it go. Stop stressing out. You're literally in your 20s. You can't have high blood pressures. You're in your 20s. Why are you stressing out? Let go. Don't think about it." And I was like, "Yeah. By the way, why am I thinking about this so much? Why am I pressuring myself into being perfect when clearly, if I wake up tomorrow, everything has changed? Doesn't matter."
And you can still do good things by relaxing,
yeah,
can't you? And you just don't think you can, but you actually do anyway, innately. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you've messed up today, you just let it go. Just find the one thing you did right today and move on. It's the past. Literally, when you wake up in the morning, whatever you did yesterday, it's literally considered as history. It's your past. You can't change it. You can't go back in time. We don't have time clocks yet. We don't have like the time reverser, time machines thing that you can go back and change whatever you did. So if you messed up, you just forgive yourself for it and move on. If things don't go your way, just leave it and move on. Because if you try to control everything, if you try to make everything around you so perfect, it's so tiring, and you'll get to a point where you say, "I'm done. I'm literally done. I can't do this anymore. I've drained myself physically, emotionally, psychologically, and I've gotten to a point where I can't do it anymore. So what do? I just give up. And giving up is not good. There's always rock bottom, but there's a high chance that rock bottom has a basement. So instead of finding that out, just get yourself up and move on. Because if you get down there, if you get in the trenches really, really deep where somebody can't get you again, you're lost. You'll be in the obituaries the next time we see you, and it's not good. So just let go. If you're listening to this, just let go. Stop being perfect.
Easy balance. Easy balance. That's right.
Yeah. Just let go. Relax. Breathe through it. If you can't, you'll figure it out. Don't try to control everything. Nothing works out in the end. You're not the spirit of Christmas future. You can't just control everything. Unless you are. If you are, go ahead. If you're the spirit of Christmas future, do it. But since I haven't met the spirit yet, and I don't think anybody has, just let it go. Don't try to control it. Don't try to be perfect. Don't think everything on social media is so picture perfect that you can be like this other person. No, you can't. People are tired out here, especially after COVID. Like you log into people's streams, into people's vlogs, and they're saying they're tired because they've worked so hard into being so perfect for the internet that they forget who they are. It's like acting. If you act as a certain character in a movie for so long, especially if it's a series that takes years, you forget who you were in the real world because you walked into this person's shoes for years. You've worked as this character for years. People recognize you as this character for years. So for you to remember who you are, what your mother calls you, what you did growing up, how your childhood was like, how your actual life is like, it's hard. It's hard to separate it. You've just time warped into this new reality, and it's not fun, guys. It's not. It's not fun. Losing yourself is not fun. Because finding yourself, it's harder than even losing yourself. It's harder trying to trace back your steps, right? Anyway.
Yeah, never breakdown or something.
Yeah, it's hard tracing your steps. It's really hard. Yeah. But as we come across the final question, Sean, art education and music education are essential components of nurturing creativity and cultural appreciation, especially for the younger generation and in today's day and age. So what are some ways to ensure that these subjects of culture and art education remain accessible and valued in our educational systems, both in schools, in colleges, even for those doing online classes and things like that?
I think as society gets increasingly sort of technologically able, and the machines take over the jobs, and we're able to do things in that way with AI, there will be more free time, and sort of how the countries handle that economically, kind of what it means is that we're not going to be doing the heavy labour that we've been very used to doing for generations past. So that means more free time for appreciating things that you like, whether that be the painting of a sculpture, or doing dance in a professional way, or the mysterious sculptures you were talking about earlier, or becoming a podcast host. All these things are artistic activities and achievements that people can follow because they enjoy doing it. And that should be encouraged as a part of any curriculum. It is in England for the last 50 or so years. It's a strong component of the liberal arts, and the idea that exploring these ideas and talking about them has its own value, and not everything has to go out for the conclusion to be a level in maths or a degree in science. Not everything; those things are massively important and valuable, but there's a good section of the community, of the population, as we know, quarter to a third, who don't want that or can't do it, and actually provide the colour to everybody else. You know, the arts people of society. They're valuable. They're not just clowns, and they've got a thing to do. And that's the constituency I'm representing. But I'm old enough to acknowledge that we need the engineers and the lawyers and even the politicians as well. You know, so it's about keeping all those things in balance and understanding that the liberal arts have a place in every curriculum, up to a good fifth of it. You know, I'm not saying all of it, of course not for everybody, but the kid usually, when they get to 15, 16, knows that's what they do well. The parents know that's what they do well, and that should be encouraged. I got a chance to go to art school. I was a bit late because I had to work out that that's what I wanted to do. But I'm so happy I did it, even though you get into debt for going to university in Britain now, everywhere, just for going to uni. But in a sense, it was worth it, because it's like the thing that you needed to do was there established as a broad base, and a thing that you're able to do at the end of the last century. And I hope that continues into this one, as people realise that education isn't just about math and not just about engineering or even nursing, all these things being massively important. So is art.
Mm-hmm. And what would be your final words for the audience on this episode regarding music and art?
Music and art together? Well, I suppose as we started it off earlier, they're coming from a different dimension and talking to a different part of our brains, which is special. And it's the same for both you and I, even though we might be used to different sounds. We're hearing the same thing that we don't have to understand as language. We just understand as dimensional feeling. And that's incredibly beautiful. And if you look at your sculptures that you were talking about earlier that have captivated me somewhat, and your clocks, the mysteries of those sculptures, and you start to look at one of my paintings or the ones I'm talking about, we're still seeing the same object, but in our own way. I think you're possibly questioning it more because you want it to give you answers. I've learned not to bother doing that and to just go with what it's trying to be. And that's what I sort of try to do with music as well. just come to music and art on their own language. And if you don't understand them, don't worry about it. Maybe they don't want to be understood. Just get what they're trying to give you.
Mm-hmm. And my final words to you guys for this episode in particular, it's something that Albert Einstein once said. It's not scientific, but he said something genius. He said, creativity is intelligence having fun. And that's something that I've gone by for years. Your creativity is just intelligence having fun. So no matter how goofy, how uncreative someone might say it is, it's just not their palette. That's basically it. So whatever you do, if you find it creative in your eyes, then that's your own form of intelligence. So share it to the world. Don't be afraid to share your work with the world. If it's a piece of music, if it's a piece of art, just share it out there. You'll find your people in the internet. The internet is a massive place. If you love crocheting, crochet whatever you want. If you want to crochet little ducks, do it. You don't have to crochet animals. If you want to paint bottles and make them as art, do it. If you want to start an entire stream where you teach people pottery virtually, do it. If you want to make weird pottery, do it. Basically, your creativity is just your intelligence having fun. So embrace your weirdness, guys. Embrace your quirkiness. Just share it. Just share it to the world. You don't have to be perfect, right? Like we said.
Absolutely. Well said, Phyllis.
Mm-hmm. And thank you, Sean, for your insight today. It's always a pleasure having you on Care Life Podcast.
Love being here.
Yeah, it was fun discussing this marvelous topic with you. I've got some insight from you, and I'm sure whoever is listening right now will have the same experience that we've had. I hope that they embrace art and the culture of art and music as a whole in a more broad perspective as to what they've learned today. You just have to embrace everything that's out there. Try to find whatever you resonate with. If you can't find it, then make your own. If it's not out there, maybe it's up to you to make it. And although that was all the time we had for you guys today, remember to check all of our socials for me and Sean and grab a copy of his books. They're on Amazon. Links will be in the description down below. And if you want to learn more about his books, just like I said in the beginning, head on back to a few episodes behind and learn more about Sean personally as an author and not just a fanatic of the arts. And we'll see you again here for another episode of Culture, Canvas, and Convos. It's not done yet. We have 3 more episodes to go. We don't know how long it will take for us to go through them all. So we'll be here for a while. But it's always fun having you guys here, joining the family of Care Life Podcast. And until I hear from you again, so stay curious, stay creative, stay compassionate, and keep the conversation going, guys. Bye!